Hello, everybody. This is Sai. Today, I have the incredible guest, spiritual teacher, Dr. Michael Lennox. Dr. Michael Lennox is a psychologist, astrologer, and expert in dreams and dream interpretation. He has been seen internationally on many television shows, beginning with the sci-fi networks, The Dream Team, has also been featured on numerous network and television venues, including NBC's Emmy Award-winning show, Starting Over, Soap Talk, The Wayne Brady Show, and many others. His radio appearances talking about the power of the dreams number in the hundreds. He is also the author of 4 books on dreams: Dream Sight, a dictionary and a guide for interpreting any dream, Complete Dream Dictionary, Little Book of Dreams, and most recently, Psychic Dreamer. He hosts a podcast called The Conscious Embodiment, which we can also watch on YouTube, where he talks about the astrology of the week and helps listeners decipher their dreams. He has so many amazing classes and workshops on shadow work, self-investigation, spiritual practice, and of course, astrology in worldwide practice based in Southern California. Welcome, Dr. Michael Lennox.
My belly, and we take a deep breath. With this breath, we calibrate that the sacred space between us has opened up, that right where each of us sit, we drop more deeply into our own experience, right where our body is, right where the chair that supports us, the heart beating in our chest, the belly rumbling down below, our breath beginning and entering and leaving our bodies. This connects us to self and then easily allows us to open to become the two or more gathered in the name of spirit expressing through us and as us. So I'm so grateful to be in connection with your beloved Sai as we seek to come together for an inspiring conversation, and we get out of the way that allows the perfect exchange to come forward between the two of us to rise up. And we know that the blessing that we are spinning is a blessing that we are already receiving and that we share with everyone who comes forward and hears our words today. We do this in service for humanity. So it is. Amen. Yay.
Thank you.
You're very welcome, honey.
As always, your prayer, it comes to my heart so deeply.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you, Dr. Michael. Thank you for being here today with me. Before I get into the questions, I'd like to talk about how I met you. So I was introduced to you, to your work, through another spiritual teacher, Colette Baron-Reid, in 2020. And what was so memorable that I'm so emotional that I remember when I heard your teaching astrology for the first time was how your messages came through from your talk. The way of how your words, your speech are being felt inside of me. And you share your vulnerability and absolute honesty. And I wonder many people who follows your work might agree that it feels like almost like what you share, teach, we are recognizing and resonating something deep inside of us, like something being awakened.
Yeah.
So here we are, and here I am. I became very curious and following you this many years. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. And, you know, when you say that to me and you talk about my work, that first of all, it moves me and it makes me, well up a little bit with tears. And part of why that is, Sai, is that the reason I think that I can be an effective teacher, especially through vulnerability and transparency, is because I didn't come into teaching until the second half of my life. Even though I dabbled in teaching and dream interpretation in my 20s and 30s, like fully over on the side of my life, I was holding workshops for people and I was working as a teacher. I was busy in my 20s and certainly the first half of my 30s healing my own very deep trauma. So I come from a traumatizing household, very, very difficult parents, both. And the journey of my life personally to move through the healings that I needed was what captivated my personal work in my 20s and 30s. So that guy who would go to the local yoga studio in Los Angeles and hold a workshop for dreams at 28 or 29, I had wisdom that comes through me that's part of who I am, that was present even at 29 and 30 years old. The wisdom is a channeled experience. But I got to tell you, I was not safe at 29, 20, 30 years old to be a teacher of people. I was too angry, rageful, narcissistic, grandiose, and struggling with my own traumas. So by the time I got into my 40s, I had been through the radical spiritual Kundalini explosion and awakening. I had done enough healing of trauma so that I was able to let my old life go at 39 and enter a world where now I'm just a teacher full time, because now at 40 and beyond, I had healed enough wounds that I was able to take people on journeys that I had myself been through in my 20s and 30s. I've met some young people today who are bona fide spiritual teachers at 30, but that to me is anathema. I was not born into that level of integration. I had to earn it. And I think that there are people today who have wisdom that comes through them in beautifully impressive ways already. That wasn't my story. So you come to me and you say, well, can this teacher help me on my path? And part of why I can is because I've done all of this work and I'm able to be vulnerable and transparent today fully, where in my younger years, I would have been slickly showing you that I've got it all together, while meanwhile, that was not the case behind the scenes.
Wow. I think that that's the reason why we are so attracted to your work is me, including myself, that people who didn't feel safe or carrying on so many wounds inside of us. And so I'm going to come to the first question here. Today, specifically, I'd like to ask you about topic of the astrology and psychology. And maybe the many of us maybe know, what's your sign? And then they said, ooh, I'm a Taurus or I'm a Scorpio. But so what is that briefly? What's the astrology?
Okay. So at the level of astrology where you sort of were talking about, like, oh, what's your sign? I'm a Taurus. That is a level of astrology that most people know about. They know their sun sign. Maybe they get a horoscope email. And this idea of popularizing astrology from this perspective came from the newspaper industry in the last century. Newspapers discovered that astrology was a thing, mostly because in the UK, there was a Princess Margaret was written about by an astrologer that she was going to have a radical event in her childhood. And then it happened. Her uncle abdicated and she suddenly, so the tabloid press in the UK created horoscopes because people were so interested in astrology from that event that was publicized in the newspapers, right? So between 1930 and 1950, every newspaper in the world created horoscopes based on the birth date and sun signs. But astrologers didn't care about sun sign the way the UK tabloid press did. But now, 100 years later, we all know our sun signs, and that's about 1/200th of what astrology is. So if you take this, I'm a Taurus, or you're a Taurus, I'm a Leo, off the table, the movement of the planets reflect the movement of us. People have trouble understanding the belief in astrology because they think, well, the planets way out there can't be influencing life on Earth. It's because they're not. They're reflecting life, that the geometrical movement of the planets creates these shapes that have archetypal interpretations to them, so that the moving astrology, when you're working with not just the sun, but all of the planets and the moon, reflects our deep internal experience. And do you know who knew this? Carl Jung, the psychologist who is a direct descendant of Freud, but who created what would be modern depth psychology, where there's a more holistic and archetypal approach to psychology and understanding parts of self that are archetypal in nature. That Jung created that work in the field of psychology, but he also knew and understood astrology. One of his daughters was a professional astrologer. He created introversion and extroversion and the Myers-Briggs type indicator from astrology. The idea that he invented extroversion and introversion as a kind of way that human beings will either be very oriented towards their external world, extrovert, or more oriented towards their internal world, introvert. Those ideas came from astrology, where alternating signs have a masculine and feminine nature. So the father of modern archetypal depth psychology also worked with astrology to understand the human condition. So what I'm doing in 2020 has a very old tradition in psychology through Jung.
Wow. I'm sure so many people must be so surprised.
Yes, I hope so.
I mean,
hope so.
horoscope mind and sign has a depth in the psychology. What? Wow. So now I'm just going to look at my notebook. And so could you please share, now that you had explained to us about what the astrology is about, so how those two modalities, specifically talking about the psychology and astrology, is there any specific reason why you chose to expand your ways of your service to the world using astrology and psychology together?
Yeah. I'll tell you that both of those things came like through me. Like it wasn't ever like, ooh, I think I'll do this or I'll do that. Dreams became fascinating to me as a teenager, and I read Freud's interpretation of dreams, his seminal work where he describes what it was like to learn and discover that if he sat with his patients who were suffering neurotic injuries and talked to them and let them just free associate and then use their dream content to find underlying themes and patterns, he noticed shifts and changes in his patients. So he discovered this idea that just talking about dreams would reveal unconscious material. In fact, what he used to describe dreams as, he called dreams the royal road to the unconscious.
Ooh, I
Right?
got
Yeah, right? Beautiful, beautiful way of describing it. So he discovered this by doing it. Patients would come and talk about their dreams, and over time, things would emerge in the conversation that changed the patients, right? So by reading that book at 15 years old, I found myself in social settings like high school. When people would say, I had a crazy dream, I would say, let me hear your dream. I want to talk about it. And I found that I had a gift for interpreting dreams. It wasn't something I learned how to do. It was something I could do right away as a teenager. If you tell me a dream, I'm hearing the story behind the story. You're telling the story of the symbols, and I'm feeling the meaning of the symbols and the other story. And I could do this intuitively as a teenager. So what happened with astrology for me was, now cut to like 10 years later, I'm 25. I get my first astrological reading. I'm looking at the copy of the chart that the astrologer has made. And because I recognize some of the symbols in the chart, like the symbol for Venus is the feminine symbol that I was familiar with. The symbol for Mars is a circle with an arrow. I was familiar with that symbol as a masculine symbol. I was looking at the chart while she's talking, and I had this strong sense that I understood it. It wasn't foreign to me. And so when I learned astrology in my 30s, I found it was like remembering something my body already knew how to do. So the two realms didn't get put together intellectually. They got put together because this body is good at both of those things. What I then found, Sai, was that me doing interpretation of a dream or doing an astrological reading is the exact same thing. There's a piece of data. It has an interpretive meaning. I get that meaning in my heart and I speak into it. If that data meaning is, I had a dream, I walked up the stairs, halfway up, it blew up in an explosion, that's the data I'm speaking into. But if it's your moon in a trine with your sun, it's still data that has interpretive meaning. Every planet, every angle, every sign, every house has meaning. So when I'm looking at a chart, there's like a list of like 78 points of meaning that my body just knows. So I look at the chart and I'm speaking into the interpretation. In my experience, there's no difference if I sit with you for 15 minutes and interpret a dream, or if I sit with you for 15 minutes and interpret your chart. It's still me taking data, feeling it, and speaking from a channeling place about what the data says to me. So they're the same.
That's incredible. That is so incredible.
I'll
Wow.
add one more thing. Both dreams and astrology for the individual that I might be sitting with have the power to reflect things that are not readily visible. The dream will reflect a person's unconscious struggles at the moment they were having it. And the astrology will reflect the current energy that that individual is working with at that time that's different than a month before, a month after. So both dreams and astrology reveal unconscious material to the person having the dream or having their chart read.
I am getting a full chill right now.
Yeah.
And this is incredible. I cannot believe the time is come already.
Yes, yes.
Wrapping up. So you offer the free gathering, the healing meditation once a month.
Once a month, first Thursday of every month, 7 p.m. Zoom cycle. michaellennox.com is my website. And here's the thing about the free monthly gathering. There's an article at the bottom of my website that has the details and the Zoom link. Just go to michaellennox.com, scroll all the way down. You'll see an article that says Global Healing Meditation. It's absolutely free, first Thursday of every month. And I talk for an hour about all the astrology for the month. And then we do a little meditation.
It's a beautiful meditation. I love it.
Good.
And then the people who sign up also can receive the recording.
That's
also.
right. If you're on my email list, you don't have to be there live, but you have to go to michaellennox.com and put yourself on my email list, and then you'll get the recording by email.
Yes. And then you also have the podcast. It's called the Conscious Embodiment.
Yeah, Conscious Embodiment, Astrology and Dreams with Dr. Mike.
Oh, and then you can also watch that on the YouTube. And it's absolutely delighted. You weekly talk about week of the astrology, like a forecast. You talk about it. So
yeah, and then we do a dream. Then we do
and a dream, exactly.
And sometimes that dream is live. The dreamer calls in. Sometimes my producer reads the dream, but sometimes we do it live, which is fun.
Thank you so very much. I am going to put your all description below. And Dr. Michael, thank you so much. Thank you
My pleasure.
so
Thank
much
you for asking me.
Thank you. Okay, bye.